Rooted revelation. Rooted revelation.
Hey everyone, welcome to the live stream today. It is Wednesday, April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2026. Top stories today. Trump says the war will be over in 2 weeks. Not to worry. Also, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says the bombing is continuing on hardened structures, housing, advanced weaponry, missiles, and the like, drones. And so within 2 or 3 weeks, we should be done with our military objectives. Also, the Supreme Court's token ideologue, Ketanji Brown Jackson, weighs in on the Colorado decision to stop or the Colorado decision to remove Colorado's ban on conversion therapy, which is just therapy talking about homosexuality and other sexual perversions. And I don't mean perversions in a derogatory way, just sex is meant for procreation, and anything else you're doing sexually besides that is considered somewhat of a perversion. So there's that. So we got, I don't know, over 30 headlines to get through today. You have to excuse me. We got about 32 headlines to get through today. You're going to have to excuse me. I'm a bit under the weather, and I'm saddled with a lot of work, and I have a meeting tonight. So I'm a little discombobulated. And one of the reasons we didn't have a Tuesdays with Perry episode last night, I was sick and had too much work to do. So we were going to do it tonight, but I have a meeting. So might have to put that off till next week. But thank you for joining me. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, share the live stream. Let's get into the headlines. I'm going to start with CNBC. Iran threatens NVIDIA, Apple, and other tech giants with attack, and that means cyber attack. U.S. tech companies have been threatened by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Some of the other corporations that are threatened: Cisco, HP, Intel, Oracle, IBM, Dell, Palantir, JP Morgan, Tesla, GE, Spire Solutions, Boeing, and UAE-based AI company G42. Now, Iran has a pretty sophisticated hacking capability. Can or will they start to hit U.S. companies? Will they be able? Will it be deterred? And what exactly would the overall outcome be there? No love lost here. I mean, if you have an IBM or a Dell computer or Intel chips or have an HP printer, or any of your systems might be associated with an attack, and if you're compromised through this attack, that's going to be bad. We don't know. It was the same thing when imminent threat of Hezbollah sleeper cells, and that response was weak. It was international, but it was weak. This might turn out to be the same, or it might be even more serious. We don't really know what their capabilities still are, and whether or not they'll carry through on the attack, the people involved in carrying out the attack, whether they're going to carry out these attacks? Are there viruses pre-placed already and they just have to flip a switch for them to go off? Hard to say. The doomsayers surrounding this conflict, I think, are a little mistaken. It goes along with the Charlie Kirk thing. A plausible excuse or plausible explanation, or the simplest explanation usually, is the truth of the matter. We'll see. I haven't been very impressed with the Iranian regime, the IRGC's military capabilities, etc. Obviously, if you're a standing civilian, you're vulnerable to any kind of attack, even a weak attack. But if you're an armed force or a prepared corporation with a whole infrastructure of IT trying to prevent hacking and malicious electronic activity, it might not be as much of a threat as before. We're going to hear more about paper tigers, like China. The Soviet Union was a paper tiger. China is certainly a paper tiger. Iran, more than likely, is a paper tiger. The bark is much worse than their bite, as we've seen so far. So who knows? Also, war-related news, New York Post, U.S. deploys third aircraft carrier, the USS George H.W. Bush, to the Middle East as Iran war rumbles on. It does rumble on. Like I said, they are allowed about 90 days. The administration is allowed about 90 days to carry out limited military operations without congressional approval. So they have a 90-day window. It looks like they're going to use about half of that. Who knows? Nobody can prognosticate about on what's going to happen with this. To me, it seems like 4 weeks of bombing campaign is if you think there's some sort of resilience in Iran there, that all of a sudden they're going to pop up unscathed and be like, nothing happened. That's not what we're being told. And yesterday specifically, and we're going to get to that in just a second, that they were huge bunker busters being driven into the fortifications housing weapons stores. Now, this is important. Purportedly, Iran said right after these weapons stores, I think in 3 locations, were struck, producing large fireballs and mushroom clouds. Purportedly, the Iranian officials immediately asked for a ceasefire because that's all they had was pulling out protected launchers and missiles out of fortified locations, shooting 1 or 2 or 5 off, and then going back into their fortifications. But now with these bunker busters, apparently these fortifications are being decimated, as with the ammunition stored there. So we might see an end earlier than even expected. And of course, they're leveling new threats. There was another tanker hit with a anti-ship missile. Didn't sink the tanker. It didn't cause an oil spill. So we even believe that some of these anti-ship missiles that Iran currently have don't have the capabilities that are as worrisome as we might have expected. Zero Hedge has the article, has the headline, the economic impact of higher oil may be smaller than feared. This is a gated article, so I don't want to get into it as much as I'd like to. However, the premise of the headline is the important part. Is sure, prolonged, escalated oil prices could have a detrimental effect on the global economy, but the economic impact on the U.S. Is sure to be limited. And so, again, the doomsayers, which again, I wasn't for this war. I think it's a terrible decision politically in a number of different ways. But I don't doubt the military's, U.S. military's ability to prosecute a war in such a fashion. We spend enough money on it in a successful fashion, I should say. Now, the thing with war is it can always go sideways, and there are always ways to, but we've war gamed this for years and years and years. So let's not get all our panties in a bunch. I'm anti-war, but it's on. So let's fight it and let's end it. Let's bring the troops home. And obviously press for a diplomatic solution because solutions through force can be very sticky. So the objectives is to degrade Iran's military and scientific production facilities, weapons production facilities, degrade them to a point where it would take decades for them to rebuild. Seems like a fair objective. And even Trump said, you know, screw the Strait of Hormuz. We don't get oil from there. So if NATO doesn't want to come in and help, well, you can sort it out after we leave. I don't think he's going to do that, but PJ Media, Trump says Iran operation will end in a few weeks. President Donald Trump said during a press conference Tuesday that the joint U.S.-Israeli Operation Epic Fury against Iran will end in 3 weeks or less. All I have to do is leave Iran, and we'll do so very soon. And they'll be coming, tumbling down. Speaking of oil prices, I would say that within 2 weeks, maybe 3, combat operations will cease. I said this a long time ago, that I go, Trump can go in for as long as it takes, and I think this was the whole idea, have this bombing campaign and just leave. And the questions were, what about the Strait of Hormuz? They'll close the Strait of Hormuz, they'll mine the waters of the Persian Gulf, they'll do all these terrible things. Those things can be interdicted. So I think that's what they're trying to do now. Reports are coming out that the B-52 bombing campaign is devastating the missile sites along Hormuz. I didn't see any reticence from Hegseth, from Trump, and in particular the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Yesterday morning's press conference with Hegseth was enlightening. He said he talked to the troops. The morale is good. The troops are just calling for more bombs, and let's finish this thing. Good. Because there has to be a finish. Open-ended wars is not what we're into. And I think if he does close this out in 2 or 3 weeks, the electorate will pay him back with support. Fox News, Trump says he's considering pulling U.S. out of NATO over Iran war stance. President Donald Trump says he's weighing a potential U.S. withdrawal from NATO, citing frustration with allies over the response to the Iran conflict. Now, a lot of people, including Jesse Waters, have detailed the fact that every time NATO wants to conduct a military operation, whether it be Libya or the Falklands or Ukraine or what have you, the U.S. has to come in and help. But every time the U.S. wants to do something militarily, you know, NATO doesn't want to help us. And in the case of Spain closing airspace, Italy withheld the use of one of their air bases just recently. The UK is mixed, but they have quite a working relationship with Iran as well. And so it's a two-way street. It should be a two-way street. It's not a two-way street. So my feed just froze. More news from the war. Iran, the Wall Street Journal. UAE wants to force Hormuz open and is willing to join the fight. Good for them. Gulf states may begin effort to persuade U.S. and others to open waterway by any means necessary. Well, we'll sit beyond reconsideration. And United Arab Emirates, Somalia is becoming the first Gulf country to directly join, not joint, U.S.-Israeli war. Trump open to exiting paper tiger NATO. Oil tanker leased to Qatar Energy was struck by an Iranian cruise missile. It's the cruise missile's anti-ship missile. But although the tanker was damaged, no crew were injured, and no oil slick, which is important. Before I go on, I need to just check something. I think, yeah, I just had a little glitch there, so I got to clean out some stuff. All right, moving on, though. The Telegraph, Trump interview, I am strongly considering pulling out of NATO. Exclusive U.S. president tells the Telegraph alliance is a paper tiger and claims UK does not even have a navy. Imagine that. The British had the biggest navy in the world in the 19th century. And that's how they conquered the world for the most part. I don't believe in NATO. I think NATO's encroachment. NATO is a agency of the WEF, and I think their encroachment onto Russia was a big mistake, and I know it had been planned for a long time. NATO actually should be disbanded because it was put into place as a hedge against the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is gone, and so the mission of NATO was to provide defense against a belligerent Soviet Union. Well, the Soviet Union is gone, so the Warsaw Pact disbanded, and so NATO should have disbanded. Germany was reunified, but NATO kept pushing eastward, which didn't make the Russians very happy, and that's why we have the Ukraine war. It wasn't because Vladimir Putin is an evil dictator and he wants to reconstitute the Soviet Union, so he wanted to take over all of Ukraine. That's just not true. He wanted to develop a buffer zone in the eastern Ukraine, in the Donbass, to provide a land bridge to Crimea, which protects their Black Sea Fleet, their only warm water port, and provide a buffer against further NATO advancement. You don't want to have NATO intelligence listening posts right around Crimea, right around the border of Russia. And, as far as the West, I like the West. It's great. Military alliance, the Western military alliance, great. But NATO, and if you know anything about Operation Gladio, there's some sinister shit going on there. So that's that. One American News, Trump posts clip of 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs hitting Iranian munitions depot. I'm just going to show you a picture there. Huge fireball. And that's usually secondary burning, which is when you strike a target and there's things there to ignite, whether it's fuel or it's ammunition. Now, that's not fuel. According to the strike and according to the Department of War, that's an ammunition dump. And if it's an ammunition depot, and there were several of these strikes with bunker busters that had secondary burning, igniting huge fires and secondary explosions. And you can even see in some of the film missiles like shooting out of the fireball, which is an indication that that's what was stored there. Because if you ignite that booster, the missile's going to go. Associated Press, Trump plans to attend Wednesday's Supreme Court hearing on his bid to limit birthright citizenship. And if you're in the left-wing bubble, you might not realize that we have a serious problem here. And it has to be addressed. And as Trump said, the law was written right after the Civil War to make citizens of all the children of African slaves that were here, because the federal government wanted to offset any push by the southern states to do what they did, is try to marginalize the freed blacks and their children, et cetera, and claiming they were claiming they're not That was one of the things, that they're not citizens, so they don't get to vote, et cetera, et cetera. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's what it was about. But now it's being abused, and you can see it with this next article here, the Fox News. Birth tourism industry thrives in Miami as Supreme Court, excuse me, my alarm going off. Birth tourism industry thrives in Miami as Supreme Court showdown gets underway. Have My Baby in Miami, concierge service claims to have assisted in over 2,000 international births in the U.S. And so we saw this in California as well. Many wealthy Chinese coming into the United States, having their babies, and then they become citizens so they could be part of sleeper cells or whatnot, or do the business of the Communist Party, what have you. And then there was also the industry recently that was discovered there, which was surrogacy. And what it was taking half Chinese sperm and impregnating women with it, or so forth and so on, or paying American women to father or to birth Chinese babies or Chinese children, which when they reach they were raised by this family, and then when they reach a certain age, they were sent back to China, knowing that when they were adults, they could come back as citizens. Serious shit. All right, getting to the next big headline here, the Associated Press. Supreme Court rules against Colorado ban on conversion therapy for LGBTQ plus kids. Or adults, but I think the ban centered around kids. The funny thing is, if you look at this photo here for a second, I just want to say, in the frieze above the Supreme Court, you could see somebody holding a fasces, which is the symbol of fascism. And we could go into what exactly that means. But everybody throws around fascism like they know what it means, and they don't really know what it means. But in any case, this article was ruling that there shouldn't be a ban because it's the First Amendment. So you're allowed to talk to your kids who say, I'm gay or whatever, or I'm trans or whatever, and go, well, I would like you to speak to a therapist about that. And if the therapist says to you, to the child, you should rethink this because XYZ, whatever. It's just a passing phase. Who knows what they say? Because the thing is that there's certain kids that say they're trans or they're gay, whatever, and their parents take them to therapy, and then the therapist encourages them. So what's the difference? It's both free speech. So conversion therapy or supportive therapy to me is the same. Because I don't think I gotta move something around. It's in the wrong spot. If you take your child to therapy, great. But, you should have equal protection to either help the child be transgender or homosexual or not. I mean, it's your choice as a parent. The child is your charge. The child doesn't have individual rights. They're a child. You only get that when you're 18. You are a charge of, you're technically the property of your parents. That's the way the law is. It's just like people like, oh, the dog, technically a dog or a pet, whatever, is property. And so is the child for all intents and purpose. All right. Again, with this story, the Federalist, trust the gender science, says SCOTUS justice who doesn't know what a woman is. The gist of Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent is that therapists challenging transgender orthodoxy need to shut up and trust the science. I had people come at me with this bogus science before. I mean, you could say anything you want, but it's all postmodern. It's subjectivism. Oh, if you believe something in your head, then it's real. It isn't. So, I looked at the science, and I don't need to read multi-page articles that all they do is browbeat you to try to convince you that this is something that's rooted in science, and it really isn't. And the problem with Ketanji Brown Jackson, and the fact that she's even on the bench at all, is that she makes no qualms about being an ideologue. She always votes with her activism. And then her very wordy dissents are typical of people that like to hear themselves talk. And there's no real reference or basis for her dissents or anything. She just rambles on about what she believes. Whether she references the science or not the science, that's not the way a judge is supposed to behave. And there are lots of this in lower courts as well, is the judge believes what the judge believes and is going to rule accordingly, instead of being objective, hearing both sides of the argument, and then saying, oh, yeah, I see what's happening here. She doesn't. She automatically sides with the argument of her party, her belief system, which is, again, postmodern. It's the same thing. I don't think she should be on the court, and it has nothing to do with her race, certainly, or her height. It's just the way her lengthy dissents and the way she rules. And that's why Biden put her on the court to begin with. Moving on, Associated Press, Trump signs order directing creation of national voter list, a move already facing lawsuit threats. President Donald Trump on Tuesday signed an executive order to create a nationwide list of verified eligible voters and this is the point. It's not about the verified eligible voters. It's about to restrict mail-in voting, a move that swiftly drew legal threats from state Democratic officials ahead of this year's midterm elections. And the thing is we never had mail-in voting before COVID. We had it implemented because of COVID, because of the pandemic, and then the pandemic was over and Democratic states kept it. Why? Because it's an avenue to cheat. Politico, Trump signs order limiting mail-in voting. The order directs the Postal Service to only send mail-in ballots to approved list of voters, as it should be. Because the action is, first of all, I have no problem with absentee ballot. It just, there's a stronger burden of proof of citizenship and who you are and your identification and so forth and so on. Because the way the mail out ballots work is that everybody who's registered gets a mail-in ballot, and millions of ballots are sent out all over the country. And when the research was done, it was found that many of these places were not residences, and the people that registered didn't live there anymore. And so it invites fraud, because you have this chain of custody where you have ballots just floating around out there that could be seized by anybody and signed and filled out by anybody. Why we never had it before. It invites fraud. Now, extraordinary circumstance of COVID, it could have been easily argued that that should be allowed, even though that some states legislatures didn't vote on it. They just, the governors just had a decree, and you can't do that either when it comes down to elections. The New York Times has the interesting headline, Trump signs order seeking federal control of mail voting as he promotes false claims. Election experts and Democrat officials called the order legally invalid, and Arizona and Oregon pledged to immediately challenge it in court. Why is that? People in Arizona can't get to the polls? It's ridiculous. The reason they do this is because they're afraid if they get rid of mail-in, mail-out ballots, that you're going to have some sort of issue. Speaking of issues, there's usually a couple things I can do to purge some caches and so forth and try to get the hangups from stopping. Let's see where I am. Yeah, that was an interesting take by the New York Times. Why do you know, it's always false claims. Now, I go over this again and again and again. A claim is neither false nor true. That's why it's referred to as a claim. And this happened during the Biden administration. Oh my God. And even the first Trump administration, forever and ever and ever. False claims, false claims. A claim is a claim. I can claim I'm the president of the United States or the Queen of England or whatever. I can claim I'm Billy the Kid, whatever. Or I can claim I'm a woman. That doesn't mean I am. It's a claim. You don't have to preface it with false. You don't have to say it's a false claim. Rudy falsely claims he's the Queen of England. I mean, come on. It's a claim. He claims that mail-in ballot was a source of fraud during the 2020 election. And I agree. And subsequent elections after that. If you're weakening the integrity of the process, you're not really a Democrat. Because as Stalin once said, it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes. Associated Press again, judge orders White House ballroom construction to halt in a ruling that leaves Trump seething. Of course it does. Why? War with it's private funding. It's paid for with private funding. Washington Times, Hegseth lifts suspension of Army helicopter pilots who flew near Kids Rock's house in Nashville. I probably should have had the clip here. I'm gonna start to be more, to do that more, to play the clip, because thinking now that you should see it, because it was pretty cool. He's out on has like an infinity pool on top of a mountain in Tennessee, and it overlooks a valley. And so the helicopter flew like right level with where the pool was. You know, when Kid Rock saluted and everything. And okay. It wasn't like the helicopter pilots were in the middle of combat. And so the helicopter pilots did that, did a flyby. You know, Democrats get pissed about everything. And we're going to get to the sensitivity of liberals soon enough. And there's nothing wrong with being sensitive. But when you become overly sensitive, you fuck everything up for everybody. You know, and again, it's subjectivism. Just because you feel a certain way about something doesn't mean you should fuck it up for everybody else that lives here. In the country, in your state, in your town, in your community, what have you. Zero Hedge, blue states are still facing a mass taxpayer exodus long after COVID. Remember how millions of people left blue states in response to the far left madness? Well, Democrats are now pretending that none of that ever happened. But they can't hide the continuing consequences of their draconian policies. People just are sick of it. You know, it's one thing to be liberal or lenient or sensitive to the issues of marginalized, but minority, and sometimes these communities are so small that they really, as far as electorates go, they shouldn't even be regarded, but they are, and that's fine. But then you take the crying or the tantrum of a very small minority of the electorate, and then so everyone has to suffer the consequences of these people. And that's why they're leaving. And that was like, I don't know if you heard about The View. So the people on The View said, people shouldn't be, Christian or conservatives shouldn't be touting getting married and having children. And then they said, because people don't afford it. And what was there? Sunny Hostin. So she's so dumb. Sunny Hostin said, well, it's right at the time where people can't afford to have children because they're cutting the benefits that allow people to afford having children. If you have to rely on benefits to afford children, maybe you shouldn't have children. Those are the people that should have children. But if you have stable employment, or you have already built a little wealth, maybe you and your wife both work, sure, you can have children. And you know what? God will provide. I know people don't like to hear that, but if you ever think about putting yourself out there, taking a risk in any situation, and you're worried about the financial consequence, I'm just telling you, if you have faith, God will provide. I just want to stick this in here. The post-millennial judge bans frog costume wearing Antifa militant from protesting at Portland ICE facility. Seth David Gilbert Todd, 24, of Clackamas County, was sentenced on Monday to 3 months of probation after pleading no contest to second-degree attempted disorderly conduct. Yeah, he was asked to disperse and he didn't, so he got arrested. But the reason I put this in here, people kept asking, where did the frog costume for protests, where did that come from? Actually, it came from this guy. This guy was the first to wear the costume in protest. And so most of the people that are protesting got it from him. I put it. So that's an ode to you, Seth David Gilbert Todd. Got nothing better to do. Post-millennial Philly Dem sentenced to 10 months in prison over threat to kill, skin alive pro-Trump poll watcher. John Courtney Pollard texted that he would skin the poll watcher alive and use his skin for fucking toilet paper. You fucking KKK cunt, he says. I don't say, he says. Which is, again, the stupid fascism shit. You're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're in the KKK because you want election integrity and you're a Democrat. Democracy is a process. And if you don't want integrity in the process, then you don't believe in the process, which means you're not a Democrat. Liberal, sure, not a Democrat. There's more from the post-millennial. Guatemalan illegal immigrant charged with murder and stabbing of Virginia man, Anibal Armando Chavera Muy, 38, is being held at the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center without bail. So if you didn't know, he was the second deadly stabbing in Virginia reportedly carried out by a foreign national illegally residing in the United States in recent weeks. The suspect accused of fatally stabbing a Virginia man on Sunday is an illegal immigrant from Guatemala, Anibal Armando Rivera Muy, 38, has been charged with second-degree murder. He's being held. This is what I wanted to read. Apparently, he knew the victim. Doesn't matter. Shouldn't be here. Now, if the victim was also an illegal alien, if you're here illegally, you shouldn't be killed by an illegal alien or anybody else. So a murder is a murder is a murder. But the murderer, the criminal, shouldn't be here. And that's what ICE's job is to remove scum like this. And Germany is getting on the right track. PJ Media, Germany's Friedrich Merz plans to repatriate nearly 1 million Syrian migrants. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz met with Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara on March 30th, and immediately coming out of the meeting at a joint press conference, Merz said that a significant number of Syrian refugees who have made a home in Germany will be repatriated, deported, to Syria. That's what the Republicans should do. Should just call it repatriation and not deportation. And you might have seen this on TV as well. Post-millennial leftists argue over privilege points and speaking order as equity cards chaos engulfs NDP leadership convention. The new Democratic Party of Canada, go figure, leadership convention turned chaotic over the weekend as heated disputes erupted among delegates over the use of so-called equity cards. The weekend event in Manitoba was meant to elect a new party leader and bring progressive members together. Footage from the convention showed leftists at each other's throats over the cards, which are color-coded to identify members from marginalized groups and grant them priority to speak. One delegate criticized the speaking order, saying, "I was standing here with my gender equity card before you called on the previous speaker. That's my point of privilege." What the fuck are you talking about? What a fucking loser. There's two things that allow you to speak: will, perseverance, and as long as, of course, you have something to say. You have to have the will to get up and speak and the balls, and that's just an expression, to get up and speak before other people. Sure, there's an order. Get there early and put yourself on a list, and they usually go down the list in order. Why this equity card shit? What, like LGBTQ people or transgender people can't speak? You could speak. Just get there early and put your name on a list. It's a delusion of these people are being persecuted. They're not. If you're a man wearing a dress and people are laughing at you, or, God forbid, misgender you, well, what the fuck? I'm not encouraging that. You know, you should be respectful to people. But I mean, it's like people that tattoo their face and have piercings all over the place on their face. And then they go, "I can't find a job." You know, you don't have to kowtow to society. Certainly not. You have your individuality, whatever. But you have to assimilate to a certain degree. Like if you're someone if you're a Spanish speaker as a first language and you're applying for a job or a customer service representative, they might not hire you because you can't good. New York Post, Trump shocked to hear about cross-dressing husband of Kristi Noem. That's too bad. So I was surprised to hear also, I don't know, I got the happen. New York Post, Trump shocked to hear about cross-dressing husband of Kristi Noem. That's too bad. I was surprised to hear about it too. But to each their own, whatever. But now it explains the affair with Corey Lewandowski. Right? So I don't know why stuff like that happens. Too many soy lattes. I don't know. But apparently he liked big boobs, so he would dress up with big fake boobs. And apparently it's all over the internet. It's like, whatever. Like I said, you're free to fetish all you want. You got shit going on. You want a fetish? Fetish. Fetish. But, you know, I don't want to hear about it. And I don't want to hear about, you know, my rights are under attack. You get the same rights as everybody else. But that's the problem with certain marginalized communities. They want special privilege. All right, moving on. Besant. This is PJ Media. Scott Besant offers financial awards for exposing fraud. Besant said we can pay up to 30% reward for the recovered funds. The Biden administration gutted the fraud departments and removed the guardrails supposed to prevent mass fraud and COVID-19 relief. And now the Trump administration is trying to pick up the pieces. Besant said on Fox, we are all hands on deck because the money that is not going to where it's supposed to go, but more importantly, is being stolen from the American taxpayer. We need to be a high trust society, we need to understand where the money is going, without a doubt. I agree. This federal fund stuff where everybody with their hand out is looking to scam the government. Then the National Review poses the question, are Republicans trying to lose? And this is by Michael Brendan Doherty. And the question is correct. With the war in Iran, with Republicans, specifically Senate establishment Republicans, just ignoring what their constituency wants. But that could go for the Democrats as well. But the thing is, it's a midterm, and the midterm election, why they're doing some of the things they're doing, it's really jeopardizing their chances at the midterms. Maybe they're just like, fuck it, right? The unwillingness of so many elected Republicans to stand with their own voters' priorities has already had electoral consequences this year, without a doubt. I don't know. I mean, people do shit politically that doesn't make sense. Let's get into some tech news before we close out here. Fox News, AI robot now helps travelers at San Jose Airport. Human AI robot now helps travelers navigate airport in California as well. At San Jose Mineta International Airport in California, travelers can now get help from a humanoid robot named Jose, of course. It greets passengers, answers questions, and helps people find their way around the terminal. You'll find it in Terminal B near Gate 24, where travelers are already stopping to try it out. Told you, humanoid robots are coming. People didn't believe me. It was only last year when Musk said, within a year, you know, the humanoid robots are going to be not in every household, but all over the place. Coming. New York Times, robot taxis stop in traffic in Chinese city, stranding travelers. Authorities in Wuhan, the site of one of the world's largest experiments in self-driving cars, cited a system failure after widespread reports Tuesday evening. I don't want robot taxis. You know, I wouldn't mind maglev trains, right? I wouldn't mind that sort of mass transit system. I don't need robotic cars. I drive my own car. Or, you know, with Uber and all these things, and the whole premise of Uber, the whole business plan is based on autonomous vehicles. So, but the fact is that it allows people with cars to make money, have a gig on the side. I think that way it makes sense. But you can't tell me that Uber and was the other one, Lyft, that their business plan didn't involve new technology, autonomous vehicles, because you don't want to have to pay the driver. Well, that's the relationship with labor is going to change significantly in the next year or two. You'll see. Why are wages going down? Futurism, a startup has been quietly pitching cloned human bodies to transfer your brain into. It's outrageous as it sounds. Transitioning from cloning animal embryos to human ones has proven far more controversial. Why would that be? Not only because of the litany of risks involved, so far scientists have gone only as far as to generate human embryo models, grown stem cells, and clone primates from fetal cells rather than adult cells like Dolly the sheep. Billionaire backed a stealth startup called R3 Bio recently announced that it was raising money to develop non-sentient monkey organ sacs. An eyebrow-raising alternative to animal testing, such structures would contain all typical organs, including the brain, ultimately serving as a source for donor organs and tissues. Alex Jones was right. He originally said that they were growing human embryos in cows and things like that. But they're actually not that new and crazy. But it is crazy. Mad science. Last article here, article number 31. It's clearer than ever social media is dangerous for kids. USA Today, we as consumers and Meta as a company have been warned repeatedly about the dangers of social media use. Will things change? When the person who's designed doom scrolling tells us that his most ubiquitous creation is dangerous, we ought to listen. A jury in California did listen when Asa Raskin, inventor of the infinite scroll, testified in a deposition that social media platforms such as Facebook and Instagram are designed to be addictive. Indeed, in the California case decided March 25th, jurors found that Meta, owner of Facebook and Instagram, as well as Google, which operates YouTube, are liable for harming the health of a woman who began using the company's products as a child. Oh, I do have one more article. Article number 32 coming up in just a minute. My thoughts on social media is it sucks. I'm a touch grass person. I'd rather be outside doing anything. I don't particularly like screen time. And I found recently with Instagram, which I don't really even use, you could find my postings there from the show. But I found lately I go to scroll on it, and even though I like news, it has some titillating content, if you know what I mean. And if you linger on that titillating content, all of a sudden that's all you get. And so it's all soft porn now. And it's like, and if you're a heterosexual man, it's like, whoa, immediately. Yeah, and I don't really go. I go into X a little bit. I used to use X, or actually Twitter, for news quite a bit. But it's just, everybody's got, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. So why would you go to a place where there are a bunch of assholes? I don't know. But you can find my work there, live stream there every day, Monday through Friday, starting at 10 a.m. All right, I'm fading fast. It's a good thing it's a last article here. Post-millennial, Oracle lays off up to 30,000 in 6 a.m. email, focuses on AI data centers. After careful consideration of Oracle's current business needs, we have made the decision to eliminate your role as part of a broader organizational change. Why is that not surprising? As I just told you, is there's going to be a new relationship with labor, and you're not involved. Right, so there's going to be mass layoffs, obviously, in tech centers that are adopting AI that don't need people to code or to run AI data centers or what have you, because it can all be run by AI. So it's not just, AI isn't just for making cute, realistic videos or, providing an answer to a question on a browser. It's there to replace labor. And like I said, white collar, if you work on a computer, your job is at risk right now. But if you do something out in the world, your job is also at risk because of humanoid robots. But that technology is far from being perfected, and it might be a while. And by a while, I mean by technology standards, might be a year or two out. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the live stream. I'm here every day around 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. So I will see you tomorrow. I have a meeting tonight. And actually, I got to go. Got a job, so I have to go right now to make some money. And but I'll be here tomorrow, Thursday, and I should be here Friday as well, unless, like I said, I'm under the weather, unless it takes over and I'm unable to function. So don't be surprised if I skip an episode tomorrow or Friday. But hopefully, take some vitamins, get some rest, and I'll be good to go by tomorrow. All right, thanks for joining me today. See you tomorrow. Respect.
You can't handle the truth. Less than 3% of you people read books.